I'm a big believer that the easiest way to take an average looking car and make it look great, or to take a great looking car and make it look absolutely phenomenal, is to simply chop off two doors. Case in point, this beautiful looking Infiniti Q60, which for all intents and purposes is mechanically identical to the Q50, Infiniti's mid-size luxury sedan. Now here obviously we've lost two doors. This car is shorter, in fact 4 inches shorter in overall length. It's also wider and it's got a much lower roof line, so we've got that sexy fastback design that makes this car look absolutely beautiful in my opinion. But you know what comes with all those good looks is the expectation of excellent driving dynamics. And I was heading into this week really excited to drive this car. I had an idea in my mind about what it would be like, and I'm leaving this week with a slightly different understanding of what this Q60 is all about. So today we're going to talk about that. We'll talk about driving dynamics. We'll talk a little bit more about this exterior and all the prices and options available. But first, let's check out the interior features and creature comforts. The interior of this Q60 picks up where the exterior design leaves off, and that is to say I'm a pretty big fan. It's a very organic design in here that works well. It's cohesive with the overall package in my opinion. Very good use of materials. We've got 3 primary materials here. Very nice leather, which is used all over the place. The dashboard, the door panels, all the way to the very, very comfortable seats. I think the seats are positioned too high in the cabin for this style of car. A little bit more on that later. But overall, nice side bolstering, not too aggressive, but just hits the mark in terms of comfort. Now the center stack is where things start to go downhill for me. The upper screen is 8 inches corner to corner. The bottom is 7 inches. The upper screen is where you get your map, your navigation map. The lower screen is basically options for that. It will give you turn-by-turn instructions on the lower screen for your navigation, but mostly it acts as more of your options and settings. Now, the bottom screen is touch only, but the top screen is touch and accessible via the scroll wheel. So a little bit confusing to know what does what, especially in the first few days in this car. I also find that the lower screen system is a little bit slow. I fat fingered it a lot. It's difficult to use while you're driving it. I personally prefer the scroll wheel because you don't have to take your eyes off the road. I think it's safer and easier to use. Now, I do hesitate to be too critical of an infotainment system because it's the type of thing that you get used to over a week or two, but I will say as a first-time Infiniti driver, this has been a little bit of a challenge for me. I mentioned off the top of this video that after a week in this car, my idea about what this vehicle is about had changed, and I want to explain that a little bit because I think it's important to understanding where this Q60 fits in the sport coupe segment. I thought this car would be a little bit more hard-edged. I thought it'd be a little bit more dynamic to drive, and what I've learned over the past week is that this Q60 is all about luxury, it's about comfort, it's about having adequate power when you need it, but to be truthful, it hasn't really encouraged me to use that power or access that ability at all, and that's okay. That's the type of car it is. So I want to go through some different dynamic aspects of this vehicle that make that the case. I want to start with the seating position. Now, I already mentioned when we took a look at the interior features that the seats are very comfortable, and that's absolutely the case, but the problem for me is they're way too high. I'm already down as far as I can get, and I still feel like I'm perched up on top looking down at the hood of this Q60 rather than in it, part of the car, which is very important in terms of a driving experience. Powering this Q60 is a twin turbocharged 3-liter V6 engine, and that's good for 300 horsepower, 295 foot-pounds of torque. This car weighs just around 3,900 pounds, and we can get from a standstill to 100 in just under 5 seconds, according to most sources out there. Now, aiding that is all-wheel drive, which is standard across the range. And that's a fast car. 0 to 100 in less than 5 seconds is really, really quick, but it gets there in a way that's not particularly exciting, and that's because this vehicle is so well insulated from the road that it's so kind of uneventful. You can't hear the exhaust, you can't really hear the engine until you get to the high end of the rev range. This thing is just relaxed. It's got a linear power curve. It just makes me want to do what I'm doing right now, which is get on the highway, put it in adaptive cruise control, just kind of hang out. In terms of steering, Infiniti's equipped what they call DAS with this vehicle. That's direct adaptive steering, and basically it's a variable electronic steer-by-wire system, and there are some benefits to that, definitely, but in terms of day-to-day usability, it's a little bit, in one word, weird, especially at highway speeds. The on-center steering is darty and twitchy and kind of nervous, which is a very strange sensation. Now, I haven't driven the car equipped without it, but I would advise that if you're looking at this Q60 seriously, you test drive one with and one without the DAS system, you may save yourself a little bit of money. The suspension on this Q60 is a high point in my mind. It's definitely comfort oriented, so it's supple, it's very compliant, it soaks up these crappy Toronto roads that I've been driving in all week, and it does so without a whole lot of body roll or pitch. It doesn't wallow over bumps. It stays really flat through corners, but at the same time, it's so isolated, so you don't get that road noise, you don't get that thumping, and the suspension just feels absolutely tight as a drum. Now, as is the case with most cars in this price range, we've got a mode selector button down on the transmission tunnel, everything from snow mode through comfort, sport, and then there's an individual mode where you can decouple things and set it to just the way that you like it. Now, suspension has two primary settings, comfort and sport. My only complaint, you can barely tell the difference between comfort and sport. I'd really like Infiniti to have a much wider gap between the two to really take advantage of this great suspension tuning. The transmission is a 7-speed automatic, and it mostly does the job. It's a little bit lazy, which is kind of in keeping with the character of this car in other areas, especially at low speeds. If I'm playing with the throttle a bit, it seems to have a hard time finding that right gear. It's always fun, or I guess painful, depending on how you look at it, to talk about options and price when it comes to luxury cars. This Q60 is no different because depending on how you want to outfit this vehicle, you can get some pretty wild swings in the asking price and how much money you're going to have to fork over at a dealership. The way it works with this Q60 is you've got three basic trim lines. You've got the base model, which is the 2.0T, that comes with the turbocharged 4-cylinder. That starts at just under $46,000. The mid-trim, the 3.0T with the turbocharged 6-cylinder engine, that's the one I'm in. It's got 300 horsepower, and it retails for just over $52,000. The range-topping Red Sport, that's got 400 horsepower. That's the sportiest iteration of the Q60. That's just under $61,000 MSRP. Now, of course, you've got access to option packages. There's basically three packages. As you move up the different tiers, you have more standard equipment. So the baseline 2.0, you've got access to a premium pack and a driver's assistance pack. The 3.0T, you've got premium pack and driver's assistance pack included, but there's an optional technology package. Now, this vehicle has been outfitted with that, so it's just under $61,000, and that's basically fully loaded. Now, it should be noted that all Q60s come standard with all-wheel drive in Canada, which is a nice added feature. When I picked up this Q60 about a week ago, I had a certain idea about how it was going to drive, and that was based strictly on how attractive this thing is. It's got all those classic sports coupe design traits. It's low slung, it's wide, it looks really aggressive but sleek at the same time. However, after about 500 kilometers behind the wheel, I've realized that the driving experience doesn't necessarily line up with all that style. And let me explain. This vehicle in 3.0T trim is much more about a refined, luxurious driving experience. Now, I don't want to understate the performance capability. This is a fast car, any way you slice it, but it's more about that comfortable daily drivability. If you want a more hardcore driving experience out of your luxury sports coupe, there are better ways to spend $60,000, perhaps on the upgraded Red Sport Q60 rather than this 3.0T. If, however, like a lot of buyers, you want daily drivability, you want refinement and luxury with that power on tap when you need it, this 3.0T is an excellent option. For Motormouth Canada, my name is Mike Gurr. Thanks for watching.